What no one told you about the betrayal that shook my marriage and how I managed to turn things around. I still remember the exact moment my world fell apart. It was as if the ground had dropped out from under me, without warning, without any chance to hold on to anything. I was 34 years old, married for 7 years to Raphael, a man I believed would be my lifelong partner. Everything seemed perfect, stable, the routine, the trust, the plans we'd made together. But we never know what's hidden behind the curtain until someone pulls it back and it all comes to light. I'm Bruna, and this is the true story of the betrayal that nearly destroyed my marriage, the desperate fight to protect what I loved most, and the rebuilding of myself after the worst. I discovered that the person who was supposed to be my ally was, in fact, trying to take my place. My own sister-in-law, Livia, Raphael's adoptive sister. At first, it all felt like unease, a strange feeling that something was off. Livia had, always been that slightly invasive person, overly present in our relationship, laughing loudly at family gatherings, and coming between Raphael and me for no apparent reason. I tried to be patient, give her the benefit of the doubt, and convince myself it was just my insecurity. But one night I saw it. A slip-up, a text message from Raphael that wasn't meant for me to see, but that became my nightmare. Sweet words, intimate conversations between him and Livia, exchanges of affection that had nothing to do with a sibling relationship. In that moment, I felt a mixture of fear, anger, and disbelief. I wanted to run, hide, scream, cry, all at once. But reality didn't give me that choice. From that moment on, I began to live a private investigation within my own home. I stayed up late, observing movements, taking notes, trying to understand what was happening, and, most importantly, trying to prove to myself that this wasn't a nightmare. Raphael began to withdraw, becoming quieter, more reserved. I felt the weight of the secret between us, and he seemed unsure how to handle it. I couldn't trust anymore, but I also couldn't simply give up. That's when I sought help. 2 very close friends, one a digital security expert and the other a lawyer, supported me in this struggle. They helped me organize evidence, put together a plan to face what was coming. It wasn't just jealousy. It was a matter of safety, justice, and emotional survival. But that wasn't all. The emotional betrayal was just the beginning. I discovered that Livia wasn't just trying to seduce Raphael. She was invading our privacy in other ways. She tried to access our joint bank accounts, manipulate information, and cause financial chaos that threatened to destroy everything we'd built. I felt invaded, violated. It wasn't just a heart attack. It was an attack on my home, on my security. I was afraid, a real fear of losing everything, a fear of not knowing how far this would lead, a fear of having to face not only my husband and sister-in-law, but their entire family, who, in the beginning, had sided against me. The loneliness and despair were constant. I fell several times and considered giving up, but there was a strength within me that wouldn't let me succumb. When I finally confronted Raphael, it was like opening a wound that had never quite healed. He admitted, with tears in his eyes, that he was confused, that he had been seduced, that he felt guilty. I wanted to believe him, but the pain of betrayal wouldn't let me. It wasn't a moment of immediate forgiveness. It was a moment of decision. I needed to decide if I wanted to keep fighting for that marriage, if it was worth it. I was tired, hurt, but above all, I was determined. Determined to protect what I had built, to not let the lie destroy my future. From that moment on, I began a long and difficult journey of rebuilding, of myself, of my marriage, of my trust. The internal struggle I experienced after that conversation was immense. I felt my heart ache every time I saw Raphael, but also a rage so deep it consumed me. I questioned his every gesture, his every word. The feeling of insecurity wouldn't leave me. It felt like a lump in my throat that only tightened. Often I thought about giving up, throwing everything away, and fleeing the mess my life had become. I didn't want to be the betrayed wife, the victim crying in the corner. I wanted to be the woman who faces the pain, who takes control of her own story. But it was difficult, very difficult indeed, to deal with the mix of love, hurt, and fear. I felt alone, even surrounded by people. My head was spinning, the nights were long, and the constant feeling that I was about to collapse was real. Outside, the situation wasn't helping either. Raphael's family, especially his parents, took a while to believe me. At first, they tried to justify Livia, saying she was going through personal problems, that I was exaggerating. It was a huge blow to realize I had no support. That I was being seen as the invader, the woman who doesn't trust. I felt betrayed again, but this time by the very family I thought I'd won over. The tension at family gatherings grew, the atmosphere becoming unbearable. That's when I realized this fight wasn't just against Raphael and Livia, but against a system of lies and manipulation that involved so many people. The emotional toll was so great that I had to find strength within myself, even when it seemed I had none. It was then that I made a decision that changed everything. I could no longer be passive. I could no longer wait for things to resolve themselves, or for someone to take sides. I started taking action, protecting myself. I gathered evidence more diligently, documented every step of the way, and sought legal and emotional help. With the help of my friends, I was able to build a strong case that showed what was really happening. I did this not only to protect myself, but also so that no one could manipulate the situation and blame me. Each step was a challenge, each day a battle, but little by little, I found myself again. It was a painful process, with many mistakes and successes, but I could no longer hide from reality. I needed to face it head on. In the midst of this battle, I discovered how much stronger I was than I imagined. Even on days when sadness paralyzed me, even when anger felt like a fire burning everything, I managed to stand firm. I learned that strength isn't the absence of fear, but acting despite it. Therapy was crucial for this. Having someone who listened to me without judgment, who helped me understand my feelings and organize my thoughts, made all the difference. I began to realize that my life couldn't be defined by betrayal or pain, but by what I did from there. The choice was mine: remain trapped in the past or rebuild my future. And I chose to fight. When Raphael's parents finally realized the gravity of the situation, the family dynamic changed. They made it clear that they no longer supported Livia, that they were on my side. This gave me some comfort, but the wound of betrayal was still raw. Their family crumbled along with the trust I had in everyone. It was a relief to know I wasn't alone, but at the same time, it forced me to face the complexity of relationships and how manipulation can destroy bonds. I had to learn to cope with this new reality, where the people I loved were divided, and I needed to find my place in this chaos. Reconstruction wouldn't be just my own, but also the way I related to those around me. The hardest part was accepting that some things would never be the same again. I clung to the good memories, the happy times I'd had with Raphael, but they began to hurt more than they helped. The trust that was the foundation of our marriage was shattered, and putting those pieces back together seemed impossible. I often found myself staring at the void left by that betrayal, feeling the weight of loneliness, even when I was near him. It was as if I were living with an open wound, aching with every look, every word. But deep down, I knew I had to move on, that life couldn't stop there. It was a slow process, full of ups and downs, where each step felt like a victory, however small. I also had to deal with the constant fear that it could all happen again, that Raphael would pull away again, or that Livia would try to interfere in our lives again. Insecurity became a persistent shadow. I learned to acknowledge these feelings, not to run from them, but also not to let them control my decisions. Each day, I tried to regain a little more of my self-esteem, my ability to trust. And it wasn't easy. I often felt like screaming, crying until I had no tears left, giving up on everything. But the will to stand, to protect what I had built, was greater than the pain. With each challenge, I felt a little stronger. One of the most painful parts of this journey was realizing how Livia's manipulation affected not only my marriage, but the entire family dynamic. She created a toxic environment, full of lies and distrust. It was difficult to trust anyone there, as no one seemed completely honest or fair. The feeling of being surrounded by people who, in some way, wanted to see me fall was suffocating. But it was in this chaos that I discovered who was truly on my side. My friends, who supported me from the beginning, were my safe haven. They helped me keep my head up, make difficult decisions, and believe that I deserved better. Without them, I don't know if I would have made it. I also began to focus on myself, my own life, my dreams, my goals. It was time to rediscover myself, to understand that I didn't need to depend on Raphael or anyone else to be happy. I started taking care of my mental health, exercising, and resuming hobbies I'd abandoned. Little by little, I began to realize there was a whole world beyond the pain I felt. Rebuilding my self-esteem was the greatest gift this difficult situation brought me. I felt more alive, more aware of my worth, and this gave me strength I didn't even know I had. With each step, I got closer to a new version of myself, stronger and more confident. Still, the journey wasn't linear. I had setbacks, moments when I doubted myself, when I thought it had all been in vain. But the difference lay in my resilience, in my ability to get back up even when it seemed like I couldn't do it anymore. Today, looking back, I see that betrayal, painful as it was, made me see what truly matters. The truth is, no one is perfect, not even our relationships. But what defines our story is how we react to our falls. I chose to get back up. I chose to be the protagonist of my life, even when it seemed like all was lost. Starting to face everything head-on was the scariest and most liberating moment of my life. I knew I would have to face not only Raphael, but also Livia and their entire family. It felt like treading a minefield, where every word, every action could explode into new chaos. But I couldn't run away anymore. I needed to establish clear boundaries, to say what I accepted and what I didn't. It was a painful process of confrontations, arguments, and tears, but also a great deal of courage. In several of these situations, I felt vulnerable and lost, but I still didn't back down. The feeling of finally putting myself first, of protecting my space and my dignity, was empowering. At the same time, I began to understand that this battle wasn't just external, but primarily internal. I needed to learn to manage my emotions, fear, anger, sadness, doubt, without letting them paralyze me. And that meant being honest with myself, accepting that I was hurt, that I needed time to heal. Sometimes I allowed myself to cry alone. Other times I screamed into my pillow, and other times I simply took a deep breath and moved on. It was a daily learning experience, a constant battle between fragility and strength. I realized that being strong doesn't mean being immune to pain, but being able to move forward despite it. And that was one of the most valuable lessons this experience taught me. In the midst of this journey, I also had to learn to redefine what I expected from my relationship. That idealized, perfect marriage in my mind no longer existed. Trust had been broken, and rebuilding it required much more than apologies. Raphael went through a difficult process, sought help, and tried to redeem himself. But I understood that what I wanted wasn't simply to go back to the way things were, but to build something new, different, that made sense for both of us. And if that wasn't possible, I would have to accept it and move forward alone. It wasn't easy to accept this possibility, but it was essential for me to be able to make informed decisions. Rebuilding also involved taking care of my mental and emotional health in a practical way. In addition to therapy, I began practicing meditation, physical exercise, and sought out activities that helped me reduce anxiety and stress. My body harbored all the tension from that time: insomnia, constant fatigue, pain that had no physical explanation. Over time, I learned that caring for my body was caring for my mind. Every small victory, like a better night's sleep or a peaceful walk, was a step toward reconnecting with myself. I realized that healing isn't quick or linear, but that every effort is worthwhile and necessary. Finally, something that helped me a lot was reconnecting with my true support network: family, friends, people who didn't judge or pressure me. They were crucial in keeping me from getting lost in that whirlwind of emotions. I learned to ask for help, to not try to carry everything alone, which was a huge step forward for me. Their support was what kept me going through the most difficult moments, what made me believe I wasn't alone. This network became my foundation, my safe place. It was in this space that I was able to start thinking about myself, planning a different future, and understanding that, despite everything, I was capable of starting over. Today, looking back on everything I've experienced, I feel an intense mix of emotions. There are still wounds that haven't completely healed, scars that remind me daily of what I went through. But these marks also tell a story of resilience, courage, and overcoming. I've learned that forgiveness, whether for others or for myself, isn't a mandatory step, but a choice. And that this choice only makes sense when I'm ready and when it benefits me. My priority today is to take care of myself, preserve my peace, and continue building the life I want, without fear of making mistakes or starting over. Each day is a learning experience, a new chance to be better, to love myself more. Starting over wasn't an act of bravery. It was an act of survival. I no longer wanted to be the victim of that story. I wanted to be the author of my own narrative. This meant many sleepless nights, difficult conversations, painful decisions, but also moments of genuine joy, rediscovery, and hope. I discovered that my strength was far beyond what I imagined, that I was capable of facing even the greatest storms without losing my essence. And, most importantly, that I didn't have to carry the weight of pain alone. Accepting help, embracing vulnerability, and being true to myself were my greatest achievements. This experience taught me that not every fight is against someone else, but often against our own fears and insecurities. I had to confront my idea of what was perfect and accept that life is made of imperfections and lessons learned. The reconstruction of my marriage, if it happens, will be based on transparency and respect. But I learned that my worth doesn't depend on another person. I am whole in my own right. I am more than the betrayal, more than the suffering. I am the sum of my choices and my ability to move forward, even when everything seems to be falling apart. I want anyone reading this to know they're not alone. The pain of betrayal, manipulation, and loss of trust is real and devastating, but there is a way out. It's not easy, nor quick, but it is possible. Seeking help, being honest with yourself, setting boundaries, and taking care of your emotional health are essential steps. Believe me, you can rebuild your life, your self-esteem, and your future. The light you seek at the end of the tunnel is already within you, even if it seems hidden. I'm here to tell you that overcoming it is possible, that we can reinvent ourselves even in the darkest moments. If I could leave a message for anyone going through something similar, it would be this: don't forget who you are in the midst of the storm. Don't let pain dim your light. Life is full of ups and downs, but the strength you need to carry on is there, inside you, ready to be discovered. Trust yourself. Allow yourself to feel, cry, rebel, but also allow yourself to get up and move on. I did it, and you can too. This isn't the end, it's just the beginning of a new story. Your story.